One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special called the DEI Special.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway, and that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
No, make it more lame. That is exactly what they're doing. And that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
And what they recently did toward both Zegler and the Disney company for their Snow White film. It turns out that both Trey Parker and Matt Stone are already preparing for the DEI special.
Snow White is the first American feature-length animated movie, 1937. It's one of the most beloved movies of all time. Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
Imagine this. A rising actress, fresh off her debut in one of Hollywood's most anticipated remakes, takes on two of the entertainment industry's sharpest minds, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the masterminds behind South Park. This isn't just any clash. It's a showdown that questions where the line between humor and harm truly lies. What happens when satire, known for its razor-sharp wit and no-holds-barred approach, ventures into territory that feels too personal, too real? Enter Rachel Zegler, whose career took an unexpected turn after becoming the target of a South Park episode that mocked her role in Disney's Snow White remake. For some, it was classic Parker Stone irreverence at its best, a bold commentary on modern adaptations and celebrity culture. But for Rachel, it was anything but funny. Welcome to the story of Rachel Zegler versus South Park, a legal and cultural battle that pits the right to free speech against the protection of reputations. It's a tale of ambition, parody, and the delicate balance between laughter and consequence.
No, the people who you need to entertain, the people who you need to serve, the people who pay your salary.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The right to buy Cosby sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face of a serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely when it got announced.
Snow White!
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
I'm sorry that the Snow White movie sucked, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry at all that we forced, basically, as a company, Daily Wire forced Snow White into production again. It was supposed to come out like a year and a half ago, and then we went after them so hard because of their variety of ridiculous sins that they actually went into full-scale reshoots on Snow White when we announced that we had a competitor.
It all started with an episode of South Park, a show renowned for its unapologetic humor and willingness to push boundaries. In typical Parker Stone fashion, Trey and Matt took inspiration from real-world headlines surrounding Disney's highly anticipated Snow White remake and transformed them into something far more surreal, a fever dream that blurred the line between satire and reality. The animated Rachel Zegler was depicted as a modern-day princess, strutting through a pastel kingdom that felt like a whimsical, yet biting commentary on contemporary Hollywood. Wielding her smartphone like a scepter, she fired off hot-button comments about historical context, studio politics, and social progress, each quip dripping with exaggerated bravado. Her character wasn't just walking through this fantastical world. She owned it, embodying everything critics had said about the challenges of updating classic stories for today's audiences. Each scene in the episode pushed the caricature further, amplifying every detail until it verged on absurdity. There were moments where the animation poked fun at the sheer scale of modern blockbuster productions, complete with jokes about budget snacks costing $40 million, a clear jab at the astronomical costs associated with remaking beloved films. It culminated in a musical number that gleefully poked at public weariness over big-budget remakes, questioning whether such projects could ever live up to their predecessors. For viewers who appreciated satire, it was pure genius, a perfect blend of irreverence and cultural critique. But for the real-life Rachel Zegler, laughter quickly turned to unease. Watching herself lampooned on one of the most controversial shows in television history wasn't easy. What might have seemed like harmless fun to some hit closer to home than expected. As the episode unfolded, she couldn't help but feel that the jokes weren't just poking fun. They were targeting her personally. The exaggerations, while clearly meant for comedic effect, began to blur the lines between parody and personal attack. This wasn't just about Disney or the Snow White remake anymore. It was about her and how she was perceived both within the industry and by the general public. For many rising stars, enduring ridicule from a show like South Park is part of the job. But for Rachel, whose career was still in its early stages, the impact was undeniable. She watched as memes spread online, reducing her to a punchline before her name could even be associated with meaningful performances. The episode left her wondering, was this just another example of fearless comedy, or did it cross a line into something more damaging?
Had the kind of Disney magic that had depth, that had absolute, it was riveting. And it's based, of course, on a Brothers Grimm story. And people loved that film. And this started with the movie star Rachel Zegler, who I believe would be categorized as a loudmouth dope.
As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public. You are simply just there to show up and say your lines and look the way they want you to look. That is our job. This path that I'm taking right now is the path that Rachel Zegler should have taken instead of just running her mouth for the last 3 years. God forbid a woman dream about true love. We're all just sitting around here, maybe I could be president one day. I hate men, I just want to be president. That screams Disney princess. Oh my God, I'm literally getting enraged. Once again, I feel like I'm back in 2022.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah, the entire film's about a love story. It's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is, and I'm sorry that chivalry in a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene.
While many individuals might have dismissed the South Park episode as mere satire or exaggerated humor, Rachel Zegler perceived it in a far more personal and damaging light. She argued that the cartoon didn't just push boundaries with its caricature. It went beyond parody and into the realm of deliberate character assassination. According to her legal team, the portrayal wasn't simply an exaggeration for comedic effect. Instead, it was crafted as a series of malicious falsehoods aimed at tarnishing her reputation and undermining her professional standing in Hollywood. The episode depicted her as an entitled diva, single-handedly responsible for a fictionalized box office disaster, which she believed had real-world consequences on her career. Reports suggested that prospective casting offers began to dry up following the episode's release, leading Rachel to feel increasingly isolated and concerned about her future in the industry. To her, this wasn't just about weathering a storm of public ridicule or shrugging off a joke. It was about protecting her livelihood and ensuring that she wouldn't become the latest example of a rising star brought down by unchecked media scrutiny. With each passing day, the weight of the situation grew heavier, leaving Rachel convinced that standing silent was no longer an option. If she didn't take action, she feared being permanently labeled as someone difficult to work with or unworthy of major roles. A perception perpetuated not by her actual performance, but by the distorted lens of a viral cartoon. Trey Parker and Matt Stone stood firm in their unwavering belief in the fundamental right to parody public figures and events. Their stance was clear. South Park had always thrived on pushing boundaries, using absurdity and exaggeration as its core tools for satire. They argued that no reasonable viewer could possibly interpret the cartoon depiction of Rachel Zegler as anything resembling factual content. After all, this is South Park, a show renowned for its outlandish humor, surreal scenarios, and over-the-top caricatures. The episode in question featured scenes so exaggerated that they bordered on the ridiculous, a character singing about rewriting classic scenes to cash more checks, or budget snacks costing a casual $40 million. These moments were designed not to mislead, but to entertain through hyperbole. Their defense was bolstered by an overwhelming wave of evidence from social media. Mountains of tweets, online threads, and comment sections filled with laughter underscored how audiences understood the episode's intent: to amuse, not to defame. Fans pointed out that South Park's style has never been subtle. It thrives on taking real-world controversies and amplifying them into absurd territory. For many viewers, the portrayal of Rachel Zegler fits squarely within this tradition of exaggeration. Despite their confidence, however, the stakes couldn't have been higher. If the court ruled against them, labeling the episode defamatory, the implications would ripple far beyond just one contentious case. Such a decision could jeopardize the very essence of what makes South Park unique: its fearless approach to tackling sensitive topics through biting satire. Moreover, it posed a significant threat to their recently signed billion-dollar deal with Paramount+. This lucrative partnership hinged on the creators' ability to continue producing unapologetic, boundary-pushing content. A ruling against them might force Trey and Matt to rein in their creative freedom, potentially altering the DNA of the show itself. It wasn't just about protecting this single episode, it was about safeguarding the future of South Park and preserving the broader principle of free speech in comedy. As the case unfolded, more details began to surface, painting a complex picture of the conflict between Rachel Zegler and South Park. At the heart of the debate was a fundamental question: did Rachel simply misinterpret the cartoon due to a lack of media literacy, or had Trey Parker and Matt Stone pushed their satire too far, crossing into harmful territory? Her legal team argued passionately that certain viewers genuinely struggled to distinguish between comedic exaggeration and factual representation. They pointed to numerous social media posts as evidence, where commenters claimed Rachel had admitted to hijacking the production of Disney's Snow White remake, a narrative they insisted was reinforced by the episode's portrayal. This, her attorneys argued, demonstrated how the parody could warp public perception and cause real reputational damage. On the other side, supporters of South Park dug deep into decades of First Amendment precedent, emphasizing the importance of protecting creative freedom in satire. They highlighted the show's long history of pushing boundaries, often targeting powerful figures and institutions without fear of repercussion. Critics warned that penalizing such exaggerated depictions would set a dangerous precedent, stifling not just South Park, but creative commentary across the entire entertainment landscape. After all, if one individual could sue over a satirical take, what might stop others from doing the same? The implications for comedians, writers, and creators everywhere were staggering. When the judge finally weighed in, their decision only heightened tensions. Rather than dismissing the suit outright or siding definitively with either party, the judge ruled that the matter hinged on a crucial point: whether the average viewer could reasonably discern the difference between parody and reality. In essence, this meant the fate of the case rested squarely in the hands of a jury. Neither side was entirely pleased with the ruling. While Rachel's camp saw it as an opportunity to prove their case, Parker and Stone viewed it as a risky gamble that could undermine their artistic license. Regardless, the verdict set the stage for what promised to be a landmark trial, one that could reshape the boundaries of free speech, parody, and personal dignity in the modern age. The internet exploded into a chaotic battleground as fans and critics alike took to social media to voice their opinions on the South Park episode and Rachel Zegler's subsequent lawsuit. Hashtags like #TeamRachel and #TeamSouthPark began trending intermittently, with each side fiercely producing memes, compilation videos, and threads to support their stance. Supporters of Rachel argued that the cartoon had gone too far, claiming that such negative portrayals could have real-world consequences, costing performers not only brand deals and audition callbacks, but also affecting their mental well-being in an already cutthroat industry. On the other hand, defenders of South Park pointed out that Rachel's caricature was relatively tame compared to the show's treatment of other high-profile figures, from politicians to pop stars. They questioned whether she was simply overreacting or if this represented a broader trend of hypersensitivity towards satire in modern culture. As the debate raged on, It became clear that rational voices urging nuance were being drowned out amidst the cacophony of snark and outrage. Some users attempted to bridge the gap, suggesting that while South Park has always pushed boundaries, there is a fine line between biting humor and potentially harmful misrepresentation. However, these moderate perspectives struggled to gain traction against the more extreme narratives taking hold online. The conversation quickly devolved into polarized camps, with one side accusing Rachel of being overly thin-skinned and stifling free speech, while the other labeled South Park as reckless bullies who failed to consider the human impact of their jokes. In the midst of all this noise, what started as a disagreement over an animated episode transformed into a larger cultural conversation about the responsibilities of satire, the power of public perception, and the delicate balance between comedic license and personal dignity. As the courtroom hearing approached, anticipation buzzed through the halls. Reporters crowded into the gallery, jockeying for position in hopes of capturing sound bites from the key players involved in this high-profile clash. Trey Parker and Matt Stone made their entrance, dressed in understated suits that seemed to contrast sharply with their usual irreverent personas. Yet, despite their attempts at appearing somber, they couldn't resist throwing in subtle nods to their signature style. Matt sported a tie adorned with tiny cartoon construction paper figures, while Trey wore custom cufflinks shaped like miniature television sets. These small touches hinted at their enduring playful spirit, even amidst such serious legal proceedings. Moments later, Rachel Zegler arrived separately, her presence commanding attention as she walked confidently into the courtroom, flanked by her attorneys. Dressed in a tailored navy blazer, she exuded professionalism and seriousness, leaving no doubt about the gravity of her case. Her demeanor sent a clear message. This was not just another day in court, but an opportunity to defend her reputation and career against what she perceived as malicious misrepresentation. Once inside, the arguments unfolded with intensity. Rachel's legal team took the floor first, reiterating their central claims that the South Park episode had crossed the line from parody into defamation. They argued passionately that the animated portrayal presented false statements as undeniable facts, damaging Rachel's image and harming her professional prospects. Specifically, they pointed to scenes where cartoon versions of Rachel were shown making outrageous demands, siphoning funds from the production budget, or rewriting classic scenes for personal gain. Such depictions, they insisted, could easily lead viewers to believe these exaggerations were based on reality. In response, Parker and Stone's defense lawyers mounted a robust counterargument. They emphasized the absurdity inherent in South Park's humor, reminding the court that the show thrives on pushing boundaries and using extreme exaggeration to highlight societal issues. Could any reasonable viewer truly interpret the antics of talking towels or time-traveling bicycles as literal truth? Surely not, they argued. To punish creative expression rooted in satire would set a dangerous precedent, stifling free speech and chilling artistic innovation across the entertainment industry. After listening intently to both sides, the judge delivered a measured decision. While acknowledging the merits of each argument, they declined to dismiss the suit outright. Instead, they ruled that the case warranted further deliberation and placed it squarely in the hands of a jury. This determination meant that the average viewer's ability, or inability, to distinguish between parody and reality would become the crux of the trial. As the hearing adjourned, neither side appeared entirely satisfied, yet both recognized that the stage had been set for a potentially precedent-setting battle over the delicate balance between comedy and accountability. In the end, the verdict came down firmly on South Park's side. Jurors took great care in explaining their decision, acknowledging that they empathized deeply with Rachel Zegler's distress over how she was portrayed in the episode. However, they ultimately concluded that the cartoon's surreal tone and exaggerated humor made it unreasonable for any reasonable viewer to interpret the content as a factual statement about her or her career. This ruling brought immense relief to Comedy Central executives who had been holding their breath throughout the trial, fearing potential repercussions not just for South Park, but for satirical comedy as a whole. Outside the courthouse, Rachel addressed the press and thanked her supporters for standing by her during what must have been an emotionally taxing ordeal. She vowed to continue advocating for more respectful dialogue within the entertainment industry, expressing hope that speaking out would encourage future creators and studios to weigh the human impact of parody before airing such content. Meanwhile, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, flanked by their legal team, offered a characteristically brief and understated quip, "We're going back to work." Their response was measured, avoiding any triumphal gloating that might tarnish what had become a nuanced debate about artistic license versus personal dignity. As both parties moved forward from the courtroom drama, each side gained valuable insights into the delicate balance between satire and self-defense. For Rachel, this experience likely solidified her resolve as an artist unafraid to defend her image against what she perceives as harmful misrepresentation. For Parker and Stone, the case served as a sobering reminder that even the sharpest jokes can carry real-world consequences, forcing them to reconsider the responsibilities that come with their audacious style in an increasingly hyper-connected era. This case stands as a powerful testament to the delicate equilibrium that exists between humor and harm, free speech and reputational protection. Though South Park ultimately triumphed in court, the legal battle illuminated just how far-reaching the consequences of even the most biting satire can be. In today's hyper-connected world, where every joke has the potential to ripple across social platforms and seep into real lives, creators must grapple with the dual responsibility of pushing boundaries while respecting the humanity of their targets. For Rachel Zegler, the ordeal was more than a clash over creative license. It was a deeply personal struggle against a caricature that threatened her professional identity and future opportunities. On the other hand, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were reminded that their unapologetic style, while celebrated for its audacity, carries implications that extend beyond mere entertainment. The trial forced both parties to confront uncomfortable truths. Can satire thrive without causing collateral damage? And at what point does parody cross into territory that compromises someone's dignity? These questions linger long after the verdict, shaping not only how we consume comedy, but also how we navigate the intersection of art, accountability, and empathy. As creativity and critique continue to coexist in a dynamic interplay, each controversy, headline, and laugh serves as another brushstroke on the canvas of our evolving cultural narrative. This episode, from its inception as a single satirical segment to its culmination in a multi-million-dollar courtroom drama, will forever stand as a cautionary tale about the power and peril of laughter in the age of instant outrage.